627. Ready or not? Here we go. Hare Krishna, everybody. My name is Suresvara.
Hare Krishna.
And people ask me, why are you doing this? Well, I was teaching at the Mayapur Institute in 2011. And I noticed that my students, just because they never saw Prabhupada physically because they were younger, that they were so disconnected from me. So I thought, this isn't right. Just because they never saw him physically, that they don't feel connected, or they think they're so unlucky because they never saw him physically, and I'm the only lucky one, and they were born too late or something. So I thought, wow, if this goes on, that means every generation of devotees is going to get farther and farther and farther away from Srila Prabhupada and his life, his teachings, his mood, his mission. So I resolved on the spot, I got to do something about this. Because I was experiencing it firsthand. My students, no matter how much I talked about Vani and Vapu, and Prabhupada always said it's not about physical presence, they just didn't get it. They didn't believe it. So I made up my mind, and then the very next day, who should I meet? A whole committee of devotees dedicated to this very thing. Jai Sri Ganesh Sri Manakanta, Guru Singh Bhagavan. Right. So that was in 2011 in the winter, and then I got back to where I was living in Hawaii, and I started doing my research. And I was getting so much encouragement from Prabhupada and Krishna and Dhama. So I started touring in 2012, and every year, every time I teach it, I learn something. So then I have to incorporate those revisions in the next edition, in the next edition. So this is the latest edition of the seminar, and it's 10 lessons. It's a 10-lesson series. And I'm so happy that we're going to do one every day. Only night games on Fridays. Otherwise, we're going to do it in the morning when we're fresher, which is really good. Okay, so this is the introductory lesson, and there is a famous picture of Prabhupada. We don't have mics for the audience, but I understand the acoustics are pretty good in here. So let's see. How about John? Yeah?
Yes.
That's your name, right? Yeah.
Yes.
John.
Oh, you were looking over there. You look, okay.
Yeah, I'm looking at
I
you.
thought you were looking at another John. I'm sorry. Go ahead. That was a pretty good trick.
He's John. John, why don't you read that title?
Srila Prabhupada, our founder Acharya.
Subtitle.
Celebrating Srila Prabhupada's unique transcendental position in ISKCON, as well as every follower's foundational relationship with him.
That, in a nutshell, is what the seminar is about. This is the title. Our founders. Notice our. I always tell people, you know, what's my core identity? It's not that I'm Prabhupada's initiated disciple. That's not my core identity. It's that I'm his instructed follower. We're actually Prabhupada followers if we follow what he says. Just because somebody is initiated by Prabhupada doesn't necessarily mean they're his disciple. Disciple means to follow, it means discipline, it means follower, in the Latin word. Okay, so we're celebrating Prabhupada's unique, that means one of a kind. His position is pivotal, it's central to every, regardless of your generation or your gender or your nationality or your religion. If you're in his ISKCON Sangha, he's the foundational spiritual master. So, what we're going to show you now... Oh, and by the way, here's what happens. As I speak, you're going to have questions, right? So make a mental note, or like Manaji's making a physical note, or an electronic note if you're really high-tech. But while I'm presenting, I ask you questions. And then, but if you have questions, other questions, then you make a note of them. And then when I'm finished, then I sit down and then you ask me questions. And in that way we'll get through the slides. and you'll get a chance to ask away. And the questions that you ask should be relevant to the points of the lesson. Okay, so here, let's do a quick overview. Famous photo. This is the photo that really brought me in. This photo, anyone know who took the photo? Yes, Roger Sequel. The devotees in New York miss Prabhupada so much, miss Swamiji so much, as they called him that days. Oh, we're so lost, we don't know what to do. So Prabhupada said, well, just put my picture on my seat, for one thing. Oh, we don't have a picture. Oh, okay. So then he asked Roger to take some shots, and a lot of them became pretty famous. And that, again, that was the one that reached me when I was first coming in. And that was on the cover of BTG, when BTG had their memorial issue right after Prabhupada passed, went back to Godhead. He lives forever issue. Okay, so the first 3 lessons, so tonight, Saturday, and Sunday, we're going to have the Sambandha lessons. Sambandha, this is the classic Vedantic scheme of knowing anything, a person, a place, a thing. Sambandha means relationship, knowledge of the process of developing a relationship. So in our case, the first 3 lessons are going to be about deepening our relationship with Srila Prabhupada. Jesse, you want to read?
Lesson 1, the Spiritual Masters.
That's tonight. We're going to do a little guided tour of Guru Tattva as Prabhupada presents it in CC Chapter 1.
Lesson 2, the Founder Acharya.
That's tomorrow morning. This is a night game and a morning game. It's going to be back to back. So the Founder Acharya principle.
Founder Acharya principle.
Special kind of spiritual master. A super guru would be like. Lesson 3.
Srila Prabhupada, our Founder Acharya.
So that has the same title as the whole series. So when I'm passing through a place and I only have time to do one lesson, I do this one because it best represents the whole series. Okay, so that's the first 3 lessons, and then Monday we'll start another section. What's after Sambandha? Avideya, acting in the relationship. In this case, it means deepening our commitment to Srila Prabhupada's mission. Okay, Prabhu, do you want to read those?
Yeah. Lessons 4 through 7.
Mm-hmm.
Lesson 4, his mission's roots. Lesson 5, his ISKCON branch. Lesson 6, his Varnashram challenge. And Lesson 7, finding our mission in his mission.
Right, this is the real nitty-gritty. This is where we act in the relationship and we find ourselves. Ultimately, it culminates in finding our mission in this mission. What am I going to be when I grow up in Krishna consciousness? And then, when we do all that, then we're qualified to go into the 3rd part, Sambandha, Avideya, and Prayojana. So, Prabhuji.
Deepening our love for Srila Prabhupada, lessons 8 through 10. Lesson 8, to love is to cooperate. Lesson 9, fictional Prabhupada. Prabhupada Das. Prabhupada. Lesson 10, Josh Srila Prabhupada.
Yeah, it's quite a journey from the spiritual masters all the way to your Srila Prabhupada. Good, okay, so let's see here. Do you have any preliminary questions about the scope and the sequence of this seminar, where we're going with it? No? It's pretty clear? Okay. Well, let's go right into the lesson.
Prabhupada.
Yes.
I will just mention real quick, the mic placement.
Okay.
With this mic, it's
You really have to eat it, right? Just put a little ghee on it, it'll be fine.
I think it's a lot to do with the angle as well.
Yes, that's right.
I mean, however it's comfortable for you.
No, this is, I get a heads up practically every time with this kind of a mic. You gotta go like this. And just signal me, don't say anything, but just because I'll continually fall out of it.
Okay, sure.
And also knock this down. Okay. Alright, lesson 1, the spiritual masters. Can you see that? Who's that?
Is it Rupa?
Krishna Das Kaviraj.
Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. If you've got really good eyes, you can see right there. So today we would say, oh, the poor man, he has Parkinson's. But he's just, he's 97 years old or something. His hand is trembling. But by the mercy of Sri Sri Gauritai, he's actually compiling what became the definitive biography of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There's many of them, but this is the most revered. And, okay, so in this first lesson we'll examine how all genuine gurus are one and yet different from each other, and especially from Lord Krishna, the Supreme Person. So in his introduction to CC, leading right up to this first verse, we're going to flash a couple of words from the first verse of the whole some 11,000 verse CC. Prabhupada writes this. Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami uses the plural here. Oh, first I got to flash the slide. Okay. So, Mataji, you want to read?
Me?
Yeah.
Alright, sure. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the spiritual masters.
That English represents the first two words of the whole CC. Bande Gurun. Gurun, it's plural. It's not just one. So that's what that means. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the spiritual masters. So Prabhupada comments, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami uses the plural here to indicate the disciplic succession. He offers obeisances not to his spiritual master alone. Who is Kaviraj Goswami, Diksha Guru? Anybody know?
Raghunath Das Goswami.
That's what most people say.
Nityananda.
Yes, Lord Nityananda is actually his Diksha Guru. But at the end of every chapter, you're excused for thinking like you said, because what does Kaviraj Goswami say? Rupa Raghunath, right? Those were his prominent Shiksha Gurus. So, he offers obeisances not to his spiritual master alone, but to the whole parampara, the chain of disciplic succession beginning with Lord Krishna himself. So to deepen our understanding of Prabhupada's position as our founder Acharya, let's look at how Srila Prabhupada presents the spiritual master in CC as one and as many. To begin, anybody know where Prabhupada is there? Were you there? Yeah, me too. Wow, okay, this is great. I love it when people were there when I was there. So you can fact check me, right?
That's the 72 one?
72, Bhagavad Dharma Discourse, Vyasa Puja Day, September 2, Saturday, 1972. Prabhupada is giving his Vyasa Puja address. And you know who's there? Not just, besides devotees. The reason that whole festival was held was because Rupanuga Prabhu approached Prabhupada and said, I think Prabhupada, it's high time that we invited some VIPs from around the country to meet Prabhupada. Because in the 60s and 70s, as you well know, a lot of us were part of it, there was a big spike in all the gurus, swamis, and yogis coming to the West. But most of them would come and go, fly by night, or even if they stayed in a different way, sometimes a compromised way. But the Hare Krishna movement was sticky. And so the New York Times was there, Mother Earth News, before it went yuppie, that was actually the Back to the Land journal of the counterculture. And WWBA, Wheeling, West Virginia, KDKA, Pittsburgh, and the Evening News were there, they wanted to record it. And local congressmen were there to meet the Swami. This is the person responsible for all these people singing on street corners all over America. So Prabhupada, he dedicated his whole Vyasa Puja address to them. If you go to YouTube and you type in New Vrindavan 1972 Vyasa Puja address, you will see and hear the whole thing. And the first thing Prabhupada says, and he had as he began, he had his bead bag. It's still there? I can't see. Anyway, he had his bead bag around his neck, and he had his hand in his bead bag. And the first thing he said was, "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming. Of course, those of you who are my students, they know what is this Vyasa Puja, but those of you who are not my students, you may misunderstand. In other words, why is this person sitting on a big crimson throne, right? Who does he think he is in egalitarian America? So Prabhupada knows that. He knows the mentality of the audience. So he's pitching his address right to them. And it's all about the parampara and how he's representing that. He's trying to demystify the guru. And then he gives the famous analogy that the guru is just like Prabhupada said, post-peon. The mailman, post-peon. You know, and if you go to New York City, you see neither rain nor sleet nor dark of night can deter this postman from his appointed rounds. So Prabhupada knew that also the Americans revered the mailman for tolerating dogs and weather. And so he's just like a post-peon. He doesn't tamper with the mail, he just delivers it. And then he went down even farther. He said, actually, the guru is the dog of God. I'm the dog of God. Because God is the greatest, He's the biggest. And any big person of this world, it's very hard to meet a big person of this world. You're surrounded by guards and secretaries and all these PR people. But if you happen to see Mr. Ford, Prabhupada always used Mr. Ford or Mr. Rockefeller in America. If you happen to see Mr. Ford in a park walking his dog, and you just go up to Mr. Ford's dog and you give him a 2-cent lozenge, Prabhupada said, a 2-cent lozenge. Very easily Mr. Ford will be pleased. Oh, you're so nice. You must love me because you love my dog. Because Prabhupada knew the mentality in America, right? Dog is man's best friend, kill the cows. He knew the mentality. So I'm the dog of God. It's very difficult to approach Krishna. He said, Adora Niyan Mahato Mahiyan. He's bigger than the biggest. He can be smaller than the smallest. But it's very easy to please me. And right on cue, one of our godbrothers said, how could we please you, Srila Prabhupada? Jam Hari Krishna. And then a big kirtan struck up, and Prabhupada took his cue. He got off the big throne, paid his obeisances to Shri Radha and the Jagannath deities were there, and he disappeared behind the throne. He got into High Griva's yellow Volkswagen, and he went away. And we were just, in ecstasy, having a big kirtan. That was the purport to the address. So what is a guru? How do they use guru when you hear it in the media, on the internet, or on TV, or on radio, or in the newspaper? How is the word guru passed into the language? Don't think anything spiritual.
Expert.
Yes! Okay, so read that, Prabhu. Who said? You? Krishna Ashram? You said? Can you see?
Almost.
You need your glasses, I can see you squinting.
Yeah, but is that properly? A person, popularly, a person who has knowledge or expertise, expert, example, a sports guru.
Yeah, everybody's got their gurus. I got my fashion guru, somebody's got a political guru. I was at the post office not long ago and it was kind of complicated, so the lady said, oh, just a minute, Mr. Hall, this is a little involved. I have to call my postal guru. Right? That's how it's passed into the language. Just kind of an expert. Now a step up from that, if you go into the 11th canto, the Avanti Brahmana says he has so many gurus in nature. So naturally, Manaj, I don't know your names yet. So.
Mahalakshmi Radha. Naturally, a teacher in nature, e.g., a tree teaches tolerance.
Yeah, Prabhupada always gave the example. The tree is so tolerant. All kinds of weather, the dogs are relieving themselves on the tree provides shade, the wood for your cradle, the box for your grave, is the old saying. So that's a kind of a guru. You learn tolerance from the tree. And let's go one step up. Madhava Priya, right? Got it.
Literally, one who is heavy with knowledge.
Right. Not kilos, doesn't mean you have to be heavy. But heavy with knowledge. And then finally we're going to hear Prabhupada give the perfect definition of guru. Hope it works. Let's see if it works, Josie.
Standard knowledge is received. from the parampara system, disciplic succession. Therefore, it is said, Srotriyam. Srotriyam means who has heard from the parampara system. Srotriyam, and the result is Brahmanishtam. He is firmly fixed up in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Shrotriya is heard rightly. Srila Saraswati Thakur said, yes, I will initiate him. He likes to hear. He doesn't go away. Brahmanishtam, and he walks the talk. He's living the teachings. He's situated in Brahman. Okay, so even if we know what a guru is, do we know why we need a guru? Famous painting. There's Arjuna. Arjuna is begging Krishna to please instruct him. We all know the verse. You know the verse? 2:7. If you know it, sing along. Karpanya dosho pahatak svabhava Puchchami tvam dharma sambuddha cheta Yatreksya nishchitam bruhitam me Shishyasteham shadimam tvam prapannam. English? Plain English? Anybody? Now I am confused about my duty and have lost all composure due to miserly weakness. In this condition, I am asking you to tell me clearly what is best for me. Now I am just your disciple and the soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. I had an Arjuna moment when I was 18 years old in an elevator with my father. I had just dropped out of ISKCON for the first time. I dropped out 3 times. I was disappointed. So I looked at my father and he was so disappointed that I had left school that he had paid for, right? So I said, Dad, I'm 18 years old now. I'm grown up. Is this it? This is life? And he looked at me like I had discovered something. He said, he gave kind of a Gary Cooper answer. Gary Cooper's an old cowboy, very tight-lipped. Yep, that's what he said, yep. So then I asked the question, really? What do I do? What do you do? Well, you find something to do with yourself for the next 60, 70 years to keep from going crazy. That's what you do. He wasn't connected with the parampara. He couldn't go beyond that. And that kind of set off my search. Because I knew there had to be more than that. Okay, so the first sentence of the purport to 2.7, Prabhupada talks about why we need a guru. So who would like to read? In the back of the room? Yes. How you're done, right?
I'm sorry?
Your name, Manaji?
Haridwani.
Haridwani. Okay, I think I just called you Ghee or something. How good is Ghee? Haridwani. Thank you. Here you go.
By nature's own way, the complete system of material activities is a source of perplexity for everyone. In every step there is perplexity, and therefore it behooves one to approach a bona fide spiritual master who can give one proper guidance for executing the purpose of life. Bhagavad Gita 2.7 purport.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this material energy is designed to baffle us. I was in Miami, Prabhupada's one and only visit to Miami, February 75. Mr. John Swami was there, and I just happened to be at the right place at the right time. Mr. John came out of the room, he was with Prabhupada in the room, and he looked at me and he said, Prabhupada told me that Maya's job is to make sure that no riffraff get back to Godhead. Thankless task. They still use riffraff?
Yes.
That's still current? Sometimes I have to ask the younger people.
It's a current term.
It's a current term, good. Okay, so it's designed, so we're confused. Especially people who pretend that they're not confused. They're really confused. They're faking it. So why do we need a guru? To learn almost anything, we need a teacher. Even to tie our shoes, Guru Ma. The first guru is your mom. Yet when it comes to studying the highest science, quote, the spiritual science of the self, that's what Krishna calls Krishna consciousness in the Gita, we often naively think we can be our own guru, right? DIY, DIY, do it yourself. It doesn't work. As Prabhupada says in force, it's not a purport. The bound cannot help the bound. We need some divine intervention. So once we understand why we need a guru, it is important we connect with a genuine guru to whom we can surrender. In one sense, of course, all genuine gurus are the same. Let's see how that's true. How is the guru? So we're going to see a quote now from Science of Self-Realization. But before we flash it, maybe some of you learned folks can tell us in what sense all gurus are one. Raise your hand.
In sound.
In sound meaning?
That the teaching
yes,
is best.
The message. So you win the prize. Please read that.
The guru is one because he comes in disciplic succession. What Vasudeva and Krishna taught 5,000 years ago is also being taught now. There's no difference between the two instructions. Although hundreds and thousands of acharyas have come and gone, the message is one. Science of Self-Realization, choosing this person.
Right. Yeah, we'll just let the references be. So, all gurus are one in the sense they're one in the same message, all genuine gurus. Although one in message with Krishna, all true gurus also differ. Let's see how. I mean, it's obvious. Right in ISKCON, like Hanumat Preshya Goswami, is he the same as Gopal Krishna Maharaj? Really different personalities, right? Their message is the same, but their delivery is like night and day. Or just think of any two people, very different. Or like Bhakti Marg Swami, does he come here sometimes?
Yes.
So how does he give Bhagavatam class? It's a drama, right? Everything's a drama. With Bhakti Marg Swami. He'll do, did he do this? Did he do pantomime for the word for word? He starts pantomiming the word for word synonyms. Or acting out the purport. It's great. It's a different style. Variety is the spice of life, as long as the spice is genuine. Okay, so how is the guru different? Every time I see that picture, I think of, that recording where you hear Prabhupada. Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha Yadavaya. It's so. This is because it sounds like it's coming from some primeval time in the universe. It's like, and that's what's going on here. Lord Krishna is enlightening Lord Brahma with his flute. That came Gayatri. So Lord Krishna enlightens our Sampradaya's primeval guru, Lord Brahma, with this sound of his celebrated flute. So one way that gurus differ is this. How about Charupa? That?
Gokul.
Oh, let's go cool. I thought, boy, you were fooling me. All right, go cool.
Let me see if I can see. But by role, the initiating and instructing spiritual masters are equal and identical manifestations of Krishna, although they have different dealings.
Different dealings. What does that mean? Let's find out what that means. Okay, so although initiating and instructing spiritual masters are, quote, equal and identical manifestations of Krishna, they have different dealings. Now, we just had Sandhya Arati, and were you singing? Yeah, you were singing Bhaktivinoda song. Yeah, so there's one verse, Nara, can you sing that line? Nara. Right, Srila Narahari Sarkar Thakur, he was fanning Lord Chaitanya in Bhaktivinoda Thakur's vision of that arti. Now, Srila Narahari Sarkar Thakur also wrote an amazing text about Guru and Disciple. And it's short. It's only 60, 70 verses. But Narahari Sarkar says this in text 48. In his Sri Krishna Bhajanamrita, text 48, Srila Narahari Sarkar states, quote, a disciple may hear some instructions from another advanced Vaishnava, But after gaining that good instruction, he must bring it and present it to his own spiritual master. He should hear the same teachings gained from his own spiritual master with appropriate instructions. So Guru is one. If they're all bona fide, they have the same message. But still, we take personal gurus who are like parents. So I'm making an observation here about what Narahari Sakar says. In ISKCON's global family, initiating gurus are like parents, and instructing gurus are like well-wishing relatives. Their relative prominence in our lives depends on the relationships we develop with them. Sometimes we are closer to our parents, and sometimes we grow closer to our uncles and aunties. Nonetheless, if our gurus are truly our well-wishers, serving cooperatively in the mission of our founder Acharya, who is everyone's foundational guru, harmony prevails. So who, for example, in our line, can you think of, I'll give you a hint, his picture is on the altar, he became closer to his Shiksha guru, Bhakti Vinod, who was initiated by whom? Bipin Bihari Goswami, who lived on the other side of the Ganga in Namdvi. Now, over time, from what I understand, Bhaktivinoda Thakur developed some differences with Bipin Bihari Goswami about, number one, the nature of the parampara. Is it a Diksha line or a Siksha line? And then also about where Mahaprabhu appeared, because Bhaktivinoda Thakur, as you well know through his research, became convinced that Mahaprabhu appeared on the Mayapur side of the Ganga, whereas Bipin Bihari, he was convinced it was that. There may have been some other differences, but be that as it may, Bhaktivinoda Thakur became more attached to the Vaishnava Sarvabhauma, who the chief of the Vaishnavas of the day was Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, who was literally a basket case and who leaped out of that basket as soon as Bhaktivinoda Thakur took him to the spot. And Jagannath Das Babaji, he confirmed, yes, this is the spot where Mahaprabhu appeared underneath the neem tree in that, what we know as Yog Pit. And he leaped, miraculously leaped out of the basket, out of ecstasy. Okay, so there is an example of someone, not just someone, but himself, an extraordinary spiritual master, who became closer to the Shiksha guru. But as I comment here, if our gurus are truly our well-wishers, whether Shiksha or Diksha, serving cooperatively in the mission of our founder Acharya, everyone's foundational guru, harmony prevails. For example, you know Krishna Kshetra Swami? You know him?
Yes.
American body, born, joined in Europe, been preaching in Europe. Now he's all over the world, but he preached in Europe for a long time as a brahmachari. Was initiating people even as a brahmachari.
He was a minister of deity worship, isn't it?
Yeah, deity worship, right. He wrote that was his PhD thesis, deity worship. And those books came out, those orange books. Now there's more on the way, making it even more simpler and clear. So, I don't know if he does this every time, but Maharaj told me that when he initiates, right from the get-go, he says, I'm your initiating spiritual master, and Srila Prabhupada is our founder Acharya. Now, I'm not always going to be here for you physically. What I want you to do is wherever you're serving, wherever you may roam, I want you to take Shiksha from advanced Vaishnavas. He encourages them right at the ceremony to develop healthy relationships with Shiksha gurus. And that's smart. Because we do need guidance. And we can't just be left to our own devices or left to our minds. So we actually need to, ultimately we need to be Shiksha gurus for each other. Real friends. Helpers. So that's one way they differ. Gurus differ by the roles they play in our lives. Very different roles. And that develops over time. Another way gurus differ are...
how the guru, how person who is liberated, Acharya and Guru, cannot commit any mistakes. But there are persons who are less qualified or not liberated, but still can act as Guru and Acharya by strictly following the disciplic succession. Letter to Janardana.
Yeah, that's an early letter too. Look at that, 26 April 68. Strictly following. Now because that's a letter, and if people don't necessarily agree that it's absolute, maybe it's just a letter for a particular person, and sometimes that's true. But here's the same point with the strictly following in a purport. Prabhupada writes in 4.18.5, quote, this Krishna consciousness movement directly receives instructions from the Supreme Personality of Godhead via persons who are strictly following his instructions. Although a follower may not be a liberated person, if he follows the Supreme Liberated Personality of Godhead, his actions are naturally liberated from the contamination of the material nature. Lord Chaitanya therefore says, by my order, he's giving a blanket order, you'll become qualified and be a guru. By my order, you may become a spiritual master. One can immediately become a spiritual master, Prabhupada continues, by having full faith in the transcendental words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and by strictly following his instructions. That's the qualification. You don't have to have 4 arms. You don't have to be Superman, Superwoman. You just have to be strictly following your spiritual master in Parampara. That's good. Observation. Liberated or non-liberated, the Guru is qualified, quote, by strictly following Guru and Krishna. In this way, according to one's capacity, everyone can act as a Guru and please Srila Prabhupada and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. As Prabhupada once put it, quote, because people are in darkness, we require many millions of Gurus to enlighten them. How many people are initiating this kind now, you know?
About 100?
Not even.
80.
About 80. 80 something. I mean, it's really, we got a long way to go. Millions of gurus. I mean, we have so many people initiated now in ISKCON, but we don't have enough people stepping up to do that. There are historical reasons why, and we're kind of slow catching up, but I can tell you that this is issue number 1 right now. And the GBC is determined to rectify this because they know that this is not right. We're constipated. The flow of mercy is blocked. So we've got to increase the people doing this service. Therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission is, he said, that every one of you become Guru. You know the Bengali? He said it. On the database, it's recorded there over 200 times that Prabhupada quoted Mahaprabhu.
It starts with Jare Dekho.
Yare Dako. Whoever you meet, Tarikaha, tell them. Krishna Upadesh, tell them what Krishna says. Amara Gyai Guru Hanya, by my order, you become a Guru. Tare Desh, according to your capacity. First of all, save yourself, right? Be at least a Guru for yourself. Save your family, save your neighborhood. Depends on, everybody has a different capacity. Save Hancock County, save Mississippi, save this land. So, or as Prabhupada puts it in the Bhagavatam, there's a beautiful purport about different birds flying in the sky according to their capacity. Some can fly higher than others, but they're still flying. So we're all actually supposed to grow up, become gurus, even if, of course, we always think of ourselves as disciples. That's the real guru. But then we have to act as an example for others. So, yeah, that quote from Prabhupada, Yare Dako, Prabhupada was always quoting that. Okay, so, and then, here's the rest of the quote. He says, in this particular case, it's a Hawaii quote. Because people are in darkness, we require many millions of gurus to enlighten them. Therefore, Mahaprabhu's mission is, he said, that every one of you become guru. And if you think, but I have no qualification, how can I become guru? There is no need of qualification. Still I can become guru? Yes. How? Whomever you meet, you simply instruct what Krishna has said. That's all. You become guru. Right at the end of Prabhupada's life. I just finished hearing for the second time the last year of all the audio from Prabhupada. So right in 2 weeks before Prabhupada passed, there was Ram Krishna Bajaj and Sriman Narayan, these two Bengali gentlemen who were well known to Prabhupada. They came into Prabhupada's room in Krishna Balaram Mandir, in Prabhupada's house. And they wanted to speak to Prabhupada alone. And the policy was, Prabhupada's not to be alone. He always has to have at least one disciple with him. But Prabhupada knew these people from a long time, from Calcutta. So, Bhakti True Maharaj was there. And so he's trying to tell the gentleman, I'm sorry we don't let Prabhupada be alone with anybody. But then Prabhupada interrupted and said, no, it's okay. In this case, you can... So, Bhakti True Maharaj, she was really curious, maybe even a little suspicious of these gentlemen. Because they were actually pretty political people. And so Bhakti True Maharaj left the room, but before he left the room, he very cleverly put his finger on the record button. He wanted to hear later what these people were up to. So he did hear the tape later. And what they wanted to know, these gentlemen, was, after you, who? I'm not sure of their motives, Prabhupada's family members had their eye on ISKCON assets. Politicians, maybe they had, who knows. So how did Prabhupada answer? The same way he answered anybody who asked that kind of thing. Or, is this quote, you will all do it. You should all become guru. This is Mahaprabhu's order. I'm not just saying a few. Of course he did say a few just to keep the ball rolling. But it was supposed to, probably we need millions of gurus. So that's kind of a wake-up call to all of us that we have to become, I'm just compiling this seminar. I'm going to Knoxville next, and I'm going to teach Nectar of Instruction. So what's the first sloka of Nectar of Instruction? It's all about how to become a guru. Vacho Begam, you got to control yourself, first of all. You got to control your tongue. Vacho Begam,
Manasa Krodha
Vega, the mind, anger, words, tongue, belly, genitals. If you can do that, you can make disciples all over the world. Wow! How big is sense control? In lesson 9, we're going to see the attitude of an authentic guru. It blows your mind. It's fantastic from Prabhupada. Okay, so gurus play different roles. They have different levels of qualification, but as long as they're strictly following, that's fine. And then here's another one. By commitment. How about Jesse?
The spiritual master who first gives information about spiritual life is called the Vartma Pradarshaka Guru. The spiritual master who initiates according to the regulations of the Shastras is called the Diksha Guru. And the spiritual master who gives instructions for elevation is called the Shiksha Guru.
Notice the progression. Introducer, one who shows the path. Initiator, one who formally brings one into the bhakti, the house of bhakti, bhakti mark. And Shiksha, because whatever an authentic guru is doing, the guru is teaching. Especially by example, which is arguably the most powerful teaching. Because what we do, that speaks volumes, right? What's the saying? What do they say? Actions speak louder than words. Example is better than precept. Again, Vishwajan Maharaj, 75, he wanted to go down the Ganga in one of those little boats. But he said, but Prabhupada, I don't speak their language. If he wanted to put the boat into all the little hamlets and have Harinam and distribute prasadam and just enliven the villagers. But I don't speak the language. So Prabhupada just laughed. He said, oh, they don't care what you say. They just want to see how you behave. Actions speak louder than words. Acharya is better than prachar. Example is better than precept. Yeah. So, and here's another one about the supremacy of shiksha. This is Krishna in the Bhagavatam 10:80-32, right toward the end of the Bhagavad. He's speaking to his old schoolmate, Sudama Brahmana. Quote, "My dear friend, he who gives a person his physical birth is his first spiritual master." That's, of course, in a spiritual society. That's the first guru. But the person who bestows, first spiritual master. And he who initiates him as a twice-born Brahmin and engages him in religious duties is indeed more directly his spiritual master. But the person who bestows transcendental knowledge upon the members of all the spiritual orders of society is one's ultimate spiritual master. Indeed, he is as good as my own self. Yeah. Indeed, whichever guru, shiksha or diksha, commits to guiding us the most, giving us the most guidance, naturally becomes more prominent in our lives. Now, having examined the oneness and difference among gurus, we're ready to look at how all true gurus are different manifestations of Krishna's mercy. Krishna is really the guru. We sing it every morning. Yasya prasadan bhagavat. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one is benedicted to them by the mercy of Krishna. By the mercy of Krishna, one gets guru. By the mercy of guru, one gets Krishna. So it's mutual. So the Lord in the heart, we all have our stories, how we came to Krishna consciousness, how we're still trying to come. That's what I want to write a story called. How I'm still trying to come to Krishna. Prabhupada loved that feature in BTG. It was one of his favorite features, the how I came. He liked those stories. So we all have our stories, and we all report also along with our external stories how we felt a presence guiding us, right? Somebody up there likes me, somebody inside likes me. And when we're sincere, when we're really looking, then Krishna, He blesses us. There's a funny recording, 1973, Venice Beach, California, one of those morning walks where you hear the wind whipping the microphone, and you hear my old godbrother Prajapati. You know, remember Prajapati? Yeah. So, and he's a very dramatic person. He's very drama-oriented. So he says, Srila Prabhupada, how is it that it's only now a pure devotee has come to these western shores? Very, it's a classic Prajapati question. And Prabhupada just chuckles. He said, before now you were too sinful. Yeah, so our heart has to be in the right place to really get the mercy of Krishna. Or in the mood of, that's true, generally, but also, you know, this question you've heard the devotees have asked, how is it, I don't understand how I'm becoming a devotee. I was just a sinner and doing all the... And then Prabhupada says, yes, I have created your good fortune. Now you go out and create it for others. That's the mood of Lord Chaitanya and all the gurus in his line. Even if we're not fit, not considering who is fit or who is unfit, right? Mahaprabhu distributed the mercy. Okay, so let's go to the next one. All genuine gurus are different manifestations of Krishna's mercy. All right, Prabhu, in the way in the back there, I don't know your name. Nanda Sutta? Yeah, okay, I've heard the name. So please read the...
I first offer my respectful obeisance at the lotus feet of my initiating spiritual master and all my instructing spiritual masters.
Yes, this is the purport to this verse, where Prabhupada, well maybe I'll just let Prabhupada say it. Yes. We can only have one Diksha Guru. Our parents are our parents. Our parents gave us birth, Maybe later on something happens, we become distant from our parents, but you don't need to get new parents. You're already connected. So Prabhupada writes this in the purport to that verse. Quote, a devotee must have only one initiating spiritual master because in the scriptures, acceptance of more than one is always forbidden. And now the counterpoint is, there is no limit, however, to the number of instructing spiritual masters one may accept. That doesn't mean casual. Oh yeah, he's a kind of shiksha guru for me, right? It's not like that. It's like people shopping around for doctors' opinions that they like. No. If you really have an authentic guru-disciple relationship in shiksha, then you follow the guru. Generally, now listen to this, Prabhupada has just said, there is no limit, however, to the number of instructing spiritual masters one may accept. Now here's how it works. Prabhupada, the last sentence of the paragraph. Generally, a spiritual master who constantly instructs a disciple in spiritual science becomes his initiating spiritual master later on. Now, historically, that's not how it worked in ISKCON, because Prabhupada was exploding a worldwide movement. He didn't have time to sit down and just be the constant, in-person, face-to-face shiksha guru of people. So who did he depend on to know who to accept as a disciple? Temple presidents, right? And so that's how it went. And but then that was sort of continued even after Prabhupada left, because there was only a few people initiating, people fly in and fly out. But that's not the sustainable model, nor is it what Prabhupada wants. Observation, in this last sentence, that the one who gives you the most shiksha generally becomes your diksha. That's historically the way it worked in village India. That indicates the natural normative guru-disciple relationship sustainable over time. To help our guru-disciple culture become more local and sustainable, we need to train and empower, quote, millions of gurus, which is what Prabhupada said, worldwide to act as local spiritual masters, both initiating and instructing, as Srila Prabhupada has indicated. Still, one may wonder, because what happened in ISKCON after Prabhupada left, we got this lopsided idea that it's all about the Diksha Guru. Still, one may wonder, is the categorical status of the Shiksha Guru really equal to that of the Diksha Guru? I mean, we put the Diksha Guru's initials after our name sometime, and, that's my core identity, that's where my self-esteem derives from. That's a misunderstanding. Alright, so let's see, is it really true that Shiksha and Diksha are the same? Let's see what Prabhupada says. So, Nanda Sutta Prabhu.
There's no difference between the shelter-giving Supreme Lord and the initiating and instructing spiritual masters. If one foolishly discriminates between them, he commits an offense in the discharge of devotional service.
Not only are the same, but if we try to say one's better than the other, it's offensive. Wow. Okay, so all genuine gurus are different manifestations of Krishna's mercy. Let's see here. Observation. The tendency to think of the Shiksha Guru as categorically inferior to the Diksha Guru is a hangover from ISKCON's zonal Acharya era. If you don't know what that is, if you're too young, if Krishna spared you that, then you're going to hear all about it in lesson 9, because to help me make a point. Lesson 9? Yeah. When Diksha Gurus were often artificially inflated and conflated with the founder Acharya. More about the ZA era in lesson 9. That's my favorite lesson. It's called Fictional Prabhupads, where we look at sentimental and impersonal misconceptions about Prabhupada. We identify the fiction and we dispel it. It's like an exorcism. It's really fun. As the next 2 slides remind us, the essence of initiation and instruction is the transference of Krishna consciousness. This is what initiation is really all about. Let's do it with a famous painting by Jadharani Mataji. Krishna appearing in the prison. And I'm reading the Rhino book. You read the Rhino? Chasing Rhinos with the Swami. Yeah, Shamsundar Prabhu. So because he and Melanie, his girlfriend, who's Malatina, they had been surviving in the counterculture by dealing hallucinogens. So they were caught, and then they took a while for it to get through the judicial system, and then in the meantime they joined the Hare Krishna movement. But then the wheel of justice turned, and then they had to go to jail, and they went to. So Shamsundar said he went to Srila Prabhupada, Swamiji, in those days, and said, Swamiji, I'm going to have to leave for a little while. Why? Because I made a mistake before I became a devotee, and I was. What is your mistake? It's on number 27, Memory Series too. And so I was dealing drugs, and then the Prabhupada said, "Oh, I was also dealing drugs." And you have to go to prison. And if you don't know the context, for those of you who don't know, Prabhupada was a pharmacist. So he was innocently saying, he was equating himself. And then he said, don't worry, you have to go to prison. Krishna, he was born in prison. He was trying to encourage his new disciple. So, the transference of Krishna consciousness is the essence of initiation and instruction. I found this beautiful verse and purport in the 10th canto that Prabhupada personally translated and purported. And it's all about Krishna appearing in prison. It's 10 to 18, I think, and it continues. So who would like to hear Prabhupada talking about the appearance of Krishna? Yes, I forgot your name.
Krishna?
Prishni?
I'll read this.
Yeah, read it, please.
Thereafter, accompanied by planetary expansions, the fully opulent Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is all auspicious for the entire universe, was transferred from the mind of Vasudeva to the mind of Devaki.
Now there's more. This is the original, this is the Hare Krishna Immaculate Conception. First of all, Vasudeva is becoming potent receiver of Krishna's mercy. Krishna is full of Krishna consciousness. And then he's transferring it from the mind of Devaki to the mind of Vasudeva to Devaki. And then, keep reading.
Devaki, having thus been initiated...
Look, this is what initiation is really about. Okay, go ahead.
By Vasudeva, became beautiful by carrying Lord Krishna, the original consciousness for everyone, the cause of all causes, within the core of her heart, just as the east becomes beautiful by carrying the rising moon.
Isn't that a beautiful analogy and image? The light becomes transferred from the moon to the sun. Now, as beautiful as that is, listen to what Prabhupada said in the purport to this verse. Srila Prabhupada writes, quote, "We should note carefully that the Lord was transferred to Devaki not by the ordinary way for a human being, but by diksha, initiation." Prabhupada highlights that remark by Shukadeva Goswami. He seizes on it. Initiation. Thus the importance of initiation is mentioned here. Unless one is initiated by the right person who always carries within his heart the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one cannot acquire the power to carry the Supreme Godhead within the core of one's own heart. So we have to take initiation from a Krishna conscious person, and then we'll receive Krishna consciousness, and which will enable us to also distribute it. Yeah. And even in the famous Tadvidhi verse in the Gita, just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master, inquire from him submissively, and render service unto him. The self-realized souls, plural, can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. Now the actual Sanskrit word is upadekshanti, which means, in the word for word, who has a Gita? They will initiate. They will initiate. In the translation, Prabhupada says, can impart knowledge unto you. But the essence of initiation is that transference of transcendental knowledge, that consciousness being imparted. So, it's very, very similar. Okay, So this is all under the rubric of the transfer of Krishna consciousness is the essence of initiation and instruction. Now, if gurus are one and different, how much more so are gurus and God? Right? With empowered genius, Srila Prabhupada was able to introduce this spiritual truth, the oneness and the difference of God and gurus, even to raw recruits. So if you've read Prabhupada's life story, how many have read the Lilamrita, the complete edition? It's nice if you read the paperback, Prabhupada, but if you really want to get a full taste, then you really need to read that Lilamrita. It's very empowered writing. I was lucky enough to be part of the team that was feeding Setsur Maharaj the research that he was requesting so he could write. This is at Gitanagari. This all happened in the 80s, early 80s. And so we'd feed him the research, and then he'd write, and then he'd invite us down to his cabin. And we'd hear the latest Lilamrita unpublished, and we just were amazed. Wow, this is really empowered. Jai Sisi Gonitai, Sisi Radha Kanta. Okay, so in the Lilamrita, if you've read the full story, then you know how Prabhupada initiated, how he did the first initiations. So, let's see. Before that, this is my favorite slide, all that. This is Prabhupada still on the Bowery. He's not even at 26 yet. And the buzz is circulating around that there's an authentic Swami down on the Lower East Side at 94 Bowery. Yeah. So a reporter named Howard Smith and a photographer named Fred McDara, who became famous for photographing counterculture figures, luminaries. They went down there, and they were amazed by Prabhupada. And Smith wrote a beautiful piece about that this person is just about to start a major spiritual movement. Watch out. So of course, if you know Prabhupada's story, he eventually had to leave 94 Bowery because his roommate was having a bad trip, and he was chasing Prabhupada, and Prabhupada had to run out of the place and call Michael, who became Mukunda. Michael, this isn't working. Can you help me get my own place? Because this is getting too dangerous. So as you know, Mukunda got Prabhupada at 26. And on June 1, they all did a caravan carrying Prabhupada's belongings from 94 Bowery to 26 2nd Avenue. And then Prabhupada started getting some serious listeners. And by September 8th, at the end of the summer, on Krishna's birthday, I'm getting close. Is it 20, what's the time? 20 to 8 or something?
It's 25.
Okay, good. We're in good shape for question and answer, because we're just about done. Prabhupada announced that today is the appearance day of Lord Krishna. We're all going to fast, which was a mind blower in itself. And we're going to chant, and I'll tell you stories about Krishna. And we're going to string beads, so they all went to Tandy's bead shop and got these big red beads. And they were stringing beads. And they don't know what Swamiji's talking about. What's this initiation thing? What's that all about? It was just like a family, just chanting Hare Krishna. And now he's talking about initiation. What's that? So, we're going to have this tomorrow. And initiate, I'll just start reading here. This is right from the Lilamrita. On Janmashtami Day, 1966, Srila Prabhupada announced on the eve of the first initiations, quote, "Initiation means that the spiritual master accepts the student and agrees to take charge, and the student accepts the spiritual master and agrees to worship him as God." He paused. Every good speaker, what the speaker Prabhupada knows how to use the pause. Let it sink in, right? No one spoke. Any questions? And when there were none, he got up and walked out. You been to 26?
Yes.
He walks to his right, and there's a door on the right, and he turns right again, walks through the courtyard and up to 2C, his apartment. And what are the people doing? They left there. Hey man, did you hear that, man? Heard it, it blew my mind. I don't know if I can do this, man. Because all summer long, Swamiji's been saying, any so-called guru who says he's God is dog. But Prabhupada, he said, what did he actually say? And the student accepts the spiritual master and agrees to worship him as God. Sakshat Haritva. Not that he is directly God, but that he's to be honored as much as God. But they didn't know what to make of it. So many things happened. Wali became a Mahapadi. He walked over to Bellevue where Kirtananda was. Because his parents had tricked him into signing himself in, because he was the first one, Kirtananda, to shave his head and wear a dhoti. So everybody thought he was completely nuts. And so with the help of Allen Ginsberg, who was a regular in Bellevue, he finally pulled some strings and got K. Swami out. But Wali went over and visited Keith and said, hey Keith, the Swami just dropped a bomb. He said, we're going to have initiations tomorrow, and it means we accept him as God. Confirmed. So Keith is pretty clever, so he says, well, we're already accepting everything he says as the absolute truth. We may as well accept him as God. What's the problem? Wally wasn't convinced. So he walks back to 26. Hey, Howard, who became Hayagriva, will you please go up to Swamiji's place and ask him what in the world he meant by that? So Hayagriva goes upstairs, and did anybody know Hayagriva? I know him. Big, very large-bodied. At that time he was an English professor at Ohio State. Big voice. So does what you told us this morning, Howard asked, mean we are supposed to accept the spiritual master to be God? And Prabhupada says, that means he is due to the same respect as God, being God's representative. Prabhupada replied calmly, then he is not God. No, Prabhupada said. Who's going to read the final? Who wants to read? Okay, I forgot your name. Katya, that's right. Okay.
God is God. The spiritual master is his representative. Therefore, he is as good as God because he can deliver God to the sincere disciple. Is that clear?
It was clear, and Prabhupada went ahead with the initiations, and they went ahead and did it. Now, Prabhupada was testing them. He doesn't want blind followers. Right in that Tadvidhi purport, the famous just try to learn truth, Prabhupada he says, both absurd inquiries and blind following are condemned. He doesn't want cheap disciples. He's testing them. Any questions? He accepts the spiritual master as God. Any questions? They were like, their jaws were dropping. If somebody from that motley crew, they lived on Mott Street, around the corner, didn't come for clarification, we're not supposed to gamble, but I tell you, I bet you dimes to dollars, Prabhupada would not have gone ahead and done that. He would have seen that they need more seasoning, because they're supposed to ask questions. But they did. And then Prabhupada went ahead. And not so much that they really knew what they were getting into, but Prabhupada didn't even... He mentioned the rules, but he more stressed the chanting. It was only after the third initiation in November 24th that Wali, who had become a Mahapadi, said, hey Swami, what is this about the rules? It's like, are there any rules to this club? Because Prabhupada, he was following Srila Rupa Goswami, yena tena prakarena, somehow or other, get them to be Krishna conscious by the chanting. If you hear the recordings, they're becoming, attached to Krishna through the chanting, somehow or other. So what was Swamiji's response to Wali Ramabari's question? Very good, boy, very good. I thought you'd never ask, right, the rules. The very next day, on the bathroom door in his apartment, Prabhupada posts that famous sheet of paper that you see even in Mayapur, dated November 25th, 1966. All initiated devotees must, right? The rule, the first thing is must avoid all kinds of intoxicating habit, must have no illicit sexual connection, etc. What else did it say? No intimate mixing with non-devotees, no frivolous sports. It reads like a little primer for the first temple, urban commune. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Must always chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Only after the third initiation, when it came from them, when they approached him, then Prabhupada put it in writing. That's Rupa Goswami's way. Yena tena prakarena mana Krishna diveshe. Somehow or other, get them to be Krishna conscious. Sarve vidi, all the vidis, all the rules and regulations, nishedhasur. Etayor eva kinkoraha, should be made servants of this first principle. Somehow or other, get them to be Krishna conscious. Yeah. Okay, I have one question for you. One more question before Q&A. If Howard had not asked for clarification, do you think Srila Prabhupada would have gone ahead the next day with the first initiations? I already gave you the answer. I don't think so. He was testing them. Okay, now I do the lesson outcomes. By the end of the lesson, if I've been clear and you've been listening, I think you have. Students will be able to identify different usages of the word guru, from popular to perfect. Explain why we need a guru. Explain how all genuine gurus are one, and also how they're different. Explain how the essence of initiation and instruction is the transference of Krishna consciousness. And finally, we should be able to recount how Srila Prabhupada introduced the oneness and difference of Guru and God. Now, when you ask questions, I always ask you to focus on those learning outcomes, because Prabhupada is central to everything practically we think, feel, will, do in ISKCON. So the tendency is to want to ask about anything and everything, right? So, and that doesn't get us anywhere in terms of the progression of the lessons. So try to focus your questions on the points that I was trying to make. And then before we do that, I'll just give you a preview of tomorrow morning. Transition. All Vaishnava Guru-disciple relationships thrive under the shelter of the founder Acharya, the foundational spiritual master of a disciplic branch. In the next lesson, we'll examine the origin and development of the founder Acharya principle with a focus on our Gaudiya Vaishnava line. It's like a history lesson. And I was sharing with Jesse, actually, 5 of these lessons are history lessons. I didn't realize that. But I need a chair to sit. You got a chair? This time I can... Now I start to feel... One second. Let me sit down before you take aim. I need to be sitting down.
Is he okay?
How about right in front of the...
Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to... Vyasa Keeper will turn me on to the best thing for your vocal cords. If you like to sing, or... We all like to talk, right? It's something called Sila, S-A-I-L-A, alias spelled backwards, from Italy. These are the best. It's pure licorice oil. It's coalesced into little drops. They're completely great. My voice is, now that my body's 72, my voice is getting frayed. Anybody notice that? Like I asked Jamuna just in 2010, during her last visit to Mayapur, I said, Jamuna, I want to visit Sharanagati next year. And could you sing Gauranga Balite Habe? And so she leans in close and she said, we'll croak it together. Because, we're not teenagers anymore. All right, Krishna Acharya Prabhu.
All right. Does this kind of still require devotees who desire initiation to take that course, the discipleship course? And has it changed?
As far as I know, it's still required. This course, I always tell the GBC, you should make a law that they should take this course before they take the disciples course. Because the disciples course teaches you how to aspire for a guru. But before you aspire, I was teaching this in Dubai, and the second time I taught it, I asked Sri Bala Prabhu, okay, what do you want me to do this time? He said, this time I want you to just teach our Bhakti Vriksha leaders, the founder Acharya course. I said, okay. So the first thing I asked the Bhakti Vriksha leaders was, does anybody not know what a Bhakti Vriksha leader is? Anyway, they're people who are Krishna conscious and they're bringing new people in. And they're not necessarily even initiated either. So I said, now when you're preaching here in Dubai, which is a Muslim country, and you have to be very careful how you do it, so we don't, disturb the powers that be. What's the first thing you do? Oh, Prabhuji, because these are all Indian people in Dubai working. First of all, we have the aspiring stage. Oh, you mean just teach them how to approach a spiritual master right away? Yes, Prabhuji. Let's back up here. How about a foundational stage? And they were polite. They didn't know what I was talking about, but they said, oh, yes, Prabhuji. Okay, so then I did the course, Founder Acharya, the whole thing. And then I said, now do you understand why you need the foundational stage first? If you prematurely teach people how to aspire for a spiritual master, they will aspire, and then they will perspire, and then they will expire. Because if you build your house on the foundation, it'll be like the sand in the Middle East. If there's a problem, right, with the guru or you or the sangha, if you think you're in the wrong sangha, the whole thing is you don't realize who the foundational guru is anyway. And that's why I always say, my identity is not that I'm Prabhupada's initiated disciple, it's that I'm his Shiksha follower. And everybody can have that identity. Different generations, to be sure, seniors instruct juniors. But that is the unity that's going to hold ISKCON together for centuries and millennia. I mean, if you meet a Ramanuji in India, they just had their millennial of his last year, 1017 to 1137. So yes, last year was 2017. They had his millennial. That's pretty good. They've been around for 1,000 years. Because if you meet a serious Ramanuji and you ask him who he is, oh, Prabhuji, Adiyam, Ramanuja, Dasan. I am your servant, a servant of Ramanuja. Because he's the Udarak, he's the Jagat Guru. And then Upakarak are the gurus who come after the Jagat Guru, whose business is to teach their disciples how to study the books of the Udarak, of the Jagat Guru, the books that he left, how to worship his Murti, how to prosecute his mission. Does that sound familiar? Whose books do we study? We have Guru Puja, whose mission? It's the mission of our founder Acharya. And so they're together after 1,000 years. We've only been around 50 years. Look what we've been through. If we want to be around, we've got to really get it that the founder Acharya provides the unity amidst the diversity, and that is a big theme of the lessons. Actually, there's only a few points that I make in these lessons, but I make them in so many different angles, perspectives, just so we can find our core identity with our founder Acharya. Yeah, as far as I understand. Although maybe you asked that because you maybe heard that it's not necessary anymore.
I heard it might be changing.
Well, you always hear that, because even after they first passed that resolution in 2014 or 15, I think, there was pushback from different spiritual masters who didn't necessarily feel it was necessary, or it was too inconvenient, but that was a real red flag. We really need it. Really, really, really need it. We're just talking about the Guru Disciple course. I think this should be a prereq for that course. But I ain't a big guy. Just a little guy. We'll see. Okay. Sure.
You mentioned that Prabhupada did not tell any rules until they asked.
He did tell rules.
Until they asked, right? You said.
Yeah, well, here's how it went. If you listen to the recordings, Prabhupada definitely mentioned the rules. It's not cheap. When you're selling diamonds, there won't be many takers. Prabhupada gave that analogy. But he stressed more the chanting. Because he knew, from Rupa Goswami and from Gita, Rasavarjam Rasopyasya, but by experiencing a higher taste, you can restrain yourself from the lower taste. So Prabhupada did that. Therefore the preaching was, stay high forever. Because everybody's trying to, open up the doors of perception, get high, and through hallucinogens and all these quasi-spiritual books. But Prabhupada said, stay high forever. You don't need to come down. And so they made posters like that. You've heard of it. You've seen the posters. Perfect for the time and place. For the Lower East Side of New York and for the Haight, Ashbury, in San Francisco. He mentioned it. He just didn't. He stressed more the experience of chanting Hare Krishna, just like Howard before he became Hare Guru. Swamiji, I've been chanting Hare Krishna for 6 months, and I still haven't seen the universal form. So, crazy. I call this crazy questions, perfect answers, right? So Prabhupada responds, that's all right, you keep chanting. It'll go away, right? It'll go away. Because Prabhupada knows their motives. They're just trying to get high. Trying to get a buzz. But because they were sincere, that feeling, that experience they were having, it was being deepened at the same time by hearing from Prabhupada, hearing the philosophy. It wasn't just a cheap thing. The more they heard from Prabhupada, the more they realized the depth of what Prabhupada was imparting to them. And their motives changed. Those who were really, really sincere seekers. So, yes, it's not that he didn't say the rules.
So I was going to say, nowadays we tell the rules pretty quick, the 4 regs.
Sorry?
We tell the 4 regs pretty quick to people.
Well, it depends on this. It depends. According to Prabhupada says, time, country, and candidate. So, although I'm a big fan of people not taking initiation too quick. I have let's see.
10-2.
Okay, I have a story, but maybe I'll save it in connection with someone waiting 17 years. Taking it. And some people are still waiting. Maybe they're waiting for the second coming. I don't know. We shouldn't prematurely jump the gun on initiation, nor should we avoid it. But it should be real. And that will vary. Krishna knows, he's reeling us in from so many far corners of Maya. He knows our history. He knows what's the right thing. So it's very individual. It's not stereotyped. It's not a 6 months. Hey, it's been 6 months, but when are you going to take initiation from Guru Maharaj? It shouldn't be peer pressure. That's what they teach you in the Disciples course. I took the course myself a few times. They teach you the right reasons for being initiated. They teach you the wrong reasons. It's good. So, and it should be very personal. It shouldn't just be, just because you're in a place and everybody's doing it, that's the wrong reason. So, one of the wrong reasons. Okay, we got a few minutes left. I try to keep it to 90 minutes, although, and this is the easiest one to do that for. It's the shortest one. This lesson here, I'll just try to be, not as many stories. Yes, Prabhu.
So, Prabhuji, the seminar series is very lauded within ISKCON. I have listened to it before in YouTube. I watched it.
That's the old edition.
Yeah, but do you have any kind of maybe indirect feedback from Ritviks about what they feel about this series?
Well, when I was in Moscow, very interesting. By the way, after this, I'm going to Knoxville. Then I'm going all the way over to Bangalore, the Ritvik capital of the world. So I'm going to find. It's going to be a bona fide ISKCON temple that I'm going to be at. But I kind of hope they send some spies over from Hare Krishna Hill to see what I'm up to. Because the founder Acharya focus, it resolves, the imitation of Prabhupada, and then the other side is Diksha Guru, what I call Diksha Guru forever Prabhupada. It reconciles the Ritvik thing with, the imitation of the founder Acharya, which doesn't happen as much anymore anyway. So, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, and so in Moscow, 2014, I'm glad I got in there because it's getting harder and harder to get into Russia, especially from America. They really liked it. I mean, these people are amazing. Well, we have a Russian. Aren't they intense people, the Russians? You don't seem like that. Anyway, they were very, eager. They were very eager. So they kept me for 3 hours every lesson. They just wouldn't let up, with the questions. And it was being translated, but pretty simultaneous. So after I presented, and then the first question, I didn't even know it, was from a representative of the Ritvik camp, because Bhakti Vigyan Maharaj said, this is the first time in years that we've had the representatives of all these different Gaudiya Gurus and Ritviks and you name it. Everybody came from their camps to see what I was up to. And so this big tall guy stands up and he says, Prabhu! He spoke English. Prabhu, Prabhu! Prabhu, you have bridged the gap. You have bridged the gap between the generations. We don't hear this thing. Thank you for coming. So I said, oh, thank you for coming. And then later on, Bhakti Vigyan Maharaj told me he was the leader of the Ritvik camp.
Well, they may not even be allowed in a temple in other places.
Yeah, I think Bhakti Vigyan Maharaj was pretty liberal for this event. He wanted people to come from all over to hear the founder Acharya focus. So before I teach at a place, I was so happy when I got here because I could see you people are sane. Because you're living with cows. The land and the cows. And you just want to hear about Prabhupada. So I know Yogendra, if somebody was really crazy, but they probably couldn't stick around, right? Show them Anna Road. Show them the road. So that I could see the mood was like a family. This is kind of my favorite kind of audience. So, but I always have to get the history of the Acharya a little bit, what they've been through, with the Dhama Acharya Guru. Like I went to France last summer. For the first time they were ready, after being so, burned by the Dhama Acharya people, and then all the reactions, the different Gaudiya Gurus and the Ritviks, and now they were ready to hear about Prabhupada. Jai. I think that is the curtain. So please come on time. We're going to abbreviate Darshan and Guru Puja in Kirtan so we can start on time. And it's all about the breakfast, right? That's the real motive. 10 by 9. It's 7:30 to 9 in the morning. Yeah.
We'll just cut it short about 5 minutes.
So I'm sorry if you didn't get a chance to air your question, but if you see me walking around, ask me a question. I am pretty much hiding. I'm on a marathon to put my forced together for not to go.
Yes,
But,
you did.
yeah, don't ask me questions now because I want to go to bed.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you for coming.
Jai.